Okay folks, welcome back to the winter workshop. Saw this neat little thing on the internet this morning. It was a hot air solar box. Looked like it was real simple to build, looked like it was a real clean item. Thought I'd give it a go. Okay, so I happen to have some coil stock. It's colored. It's the stuff that I use to cover all my window trim on the house. And it's left over from that. I'm going to make is two 24 by 24 of these setups. So I just roughed it out pretty quickly into, obviously the 24, and I'm about 50 feet long. Now I'm just going to use a utility knife, and anything happens to be a 2 by 4 I came up with for a straight edge. So I'll just get it measured out to the 24 by 24, score it with the utility knife, make 2-3 passes on it, give it a slight bend as we go through it, and it breaks right down pretty easily and gives you a nice clean cut. All right. I'm sure you noticed when I flipped the metal over that the metal was not black on either side. It was a green, which is the color of my trim outside, with a white on the other side. I just went over in the other side of the basement and I've got some flat black paint and just gave it its first coat over there. So while that's drying, I'm going to cut the frames. Okay, as the statement goes, measure twice, cut once. Make sure you get them all to the right length. Alright, so we got them to length. These little corners here are really cool. If you ever need to make up screens for around the house, this is a really neat system, and you can make them to any size. I've made quite a few around here. But they just slip right in. Give them a nice little push. Slip it in the next one. Give it a nice little push. Sometimes they have a nice little snap sound to them. They are directional. It's like those, I don't know if you can see those little tabs on the inside there. They like to go along with this little rib. Kind of slips into a little area there. All right, and I'm just going to set up the 2 frames. Now, here's the 2 frames. That worked out pretty good. No symbolism intended. I just wanted to show that there's 2 frames. Double check my dimensions. Yes, I do have it at 24 1/4, which I'm pretty happy about. And that took all of about 15 minutes. Alright, so the next step to this, as I remember on the video, is I need to apply the first piece of metal onto it, which is going to end up being my back. So I'm going to just get it placed on there, and what they said to use, which I picked some up, was some metal foil. I found some at the big box store, fairly cheap $1 on it. I think it was around $5. But this is, God, I think it has like 300 feet in it, for crying out loud. So there should be plenty of this left over for me to be able to do a couple more if it works. Or at least I've got it around here for other projects. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up, cut a few pieces of it. I'm going to take the corners of it and get it to lay nice and flat on this so it'll stay on there. But all I'm going to do is wrap some of it around the corners to hold it in place, and then we'll step up to the next portion of this. Corners are now taped. All I did was cut some strips, cut some little strips of it, hit it on the 4 corners. And I'll tell you, it took me longer to do this than it did to do the rest of this. My eyesight's gotten to the point of getting that little backer off there. It was becoming quite a little pain. So let's flip it over, and this is where the scrap pieces come in. The scrap pieces are supposed to be little standoffs. Now what he did is he riveted these things in. And I actually have some little tap screws that I think I'm going to use. So I'll probably go that direction with it. In fact, before I put these on, but that was what the pieces are for. And when I do come back to this, these will be mounted on. I'll decide whether I'm going to use my little tap screws or if I'm actually going to dig out some rivets. But I think I could do it with the tap screws just as easily, hit the same process. But what I do need to do right now, since this is the back panel, is I'm going to do a layout on here, and I have to get a series of holes coming across this, so I have an air inlet in an air outlet. He only used an 1/8 of an inch bit, but I have a feeling, well, excuse me, he actually used a paper punch. So that works out to about a 3/16 bit. And I think I'm going to grab one of my 1/4 inch bits and I'm going to go with it. The size of the panel, he did 14 holes across in 2 rolls. So he had 28 holes going across the thing. I'm going to be somewheres in that area. I'll make some decisions as I lay the thing out. But that's the next step. I'm going to lay out 2 rows and 2 rows, kind of divide out where my holes are going to be and decide how many holes I actually want to put in this. His panel was a lot bigger, but yet I still want air movement through it. That's the next step. I'll work that out. Well, I have the holes drilled, and for no other reason than just it laid out rather nicely. So I ended up with 2 rows of 10, so I have 20 holes top and bottom. Layout worked out pretty cool. I like it. 1/4 inch holes. We'll see how the airflow goes. I laid my 2 pieces of the scrap down on the board, just kind of centered it off so it would balance out. Then I poked 4 more holes through so that I can know where these things are and screw right into them. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to put them right back on the 2 lines I traced on both sides of these so I can line them back up. And just to hold them in place, I got some duct tape here. I'm just going to throw that on it for the time being, just to hold it there. So when I flip the thing over, the pieces stay there. God, that would be nice. Alright, so I'm going to go get a couple of my capping screws, because that's what I decided on. It's just simple, easy to do, and I can't see why not. Alright, so I'm going to grab my capping screws from the other side. I'm going to flip this over, I'm going to put those screws in, lock it down, and with any kind of luck, the paint is dry on the other panel. If it's not, I'll have to spray that again, and I'll come back with that and show you what we've got.
Here, 98.5, the Sports Hub.
Well, the panel is just about dry, and it actually came out pretty good. You know, I took that green and white panel and just sprayed it with some flat black. He used some sort of cinema foil, or I don't know, you have to look at the website to see exactly what he used. I'm assuming what I have is probably thicker than what he has, because he had to go through a little more effort to make sure everything was flat and played out correctly. And so I think it was, I think that cinema foil is probably a little more like tin foil, but I don't know. You guys will have to do the checking on that. But I did the same thing as the other piece of metal. It's on the back side right here. So right on the front side of this frame, I put the black panel on. So this is front side. So the idea now is to take the second frame, place that over the top of this. Now I have the corners taped on it. Get this over the top of it and get this taped on. This is kind of a curious part of it, and this is something I'm going to have to, I guess, look into a little bit, is it's kind of strange. You're sealing off a space of air that you're not going to get air from. You're only going to get air from the back side. But I guess it keeps the panel cool enough, circulating the air from the back side, that it doesn't allow this to actually build up, pressurize, and blow that plastic weather stripping off of it. I think that's kind of neat. We'll see how it actually works. And if it does work in any sort of a manner, well, I think my next step to this is going to be go a little thicker and see what we get from it, and who knows, maybe even throw a fan behind it. But let's just go one step at a time here and see what we get. Alright, so I'm going to take my metal tape now. I'm going to cut it to the lengths. I'm going to get ready, and I'm going to tape this on permanently. And that's the next step to this process. God, it looks kind of neat. What a fun little toy. Alright, my apologies. Oop, turn off the radio. AFC game's on in about an hour and a half, so I'm listening to pregame going on while I'm doing this. But again, sorry guys, I got a little ahead of myself. What we had was the back panel. The pieces of the two stays are already attached to it. We put the black panel on, taped the corners. Then I grabbed the other frame. I had cut some of the aluminum foil probably about an inch longer than what I had going on there. And as it ends up, I think that was a pretty smart thing to do. Because cutting it once it's on, and you get it laid across it with just a pair of scissors, for crying out loud, was a pretty easy thing to do. And it kind of sealed all the corners, making it just that hair longer. That worked out kind of cool. So I'm pretty happy about that. But anyways, I had taken the second frame, put it over the top, applied the tape to the face area itself, and then with my thumbs just slowly curled it down from the centers. Now, the reason for that is if you catch it from a side, it starts to wrinkle, you're stuck with a wrinkle, and it just comes out like crap. So it really is just, you start it from the center, easily roll it down, get it to happen on that thing, and then get it hit the second side. This tape is awesomely sticks. Love it. So that inexpensive tape that I got out of the big box lumberyard actually looks like it's going to work out pretty good. Alright, so that worked out fine. The next step to this is I have my window insulating kit. Happens to be the same one he had, and to be honest with you, the reason I don't like the big box lumberyards, they're already in the spring. It's not even February, guys. You still need to carry this stuff. Oh, so I went to Ace, the local family-owned lumberyard, and yes, they still have it. Oh, thank God they're still there. So the idea here is that I take the plastic that comes from that, oversize it by a couple inches going around it, tape that down on the table so that I have a decent stretch to it. I take the double-sided tape that comes with this, and I'm going to tape it all the way around the perimeter of this so I have a good solid seal happening on that to hold the plastic in place. Then, with the plastic sheet